Hey, how's it going? I'm Nick, and I'm your host on the Echo Academy podcast, a podcast dedicated to uncovering helpful tools and strategies that help make your quality of life at work better. On today's podcast, we talk about what it takes to adapt quickly when you relocate to a new country for work. And my guest today is Allison Carr. Allison has over 20 years of experience working within the recruitment and HR arena and is currently the head of HR for a Japanese investment bank. She has had the opportunity to live and work in three countries outside of the UK, namely Cyprus, Spain, and now Singapore. This afforded Alison the opportunity to experience different cultures, make new friends, which sometimes includes dealing with the trauma of losing them as well, all whilst maintaining connections with those she left behind in her home country. In other words, the ideal person to speak to on this topic. And as usual, if you'd like to find out more about Allison and this episode, you can go to echo.academy/Allison. That's ekho.academy/Allison. Here's my interview with Allison Carr. Allison, welcome.
Thank you.
So I don't know, like, because for me, I've never relocated to any country. I've lived long term in a few countries, but I don't know. Maybe you can, for those who haven't experienced it, like myself, can you briefly explain what that feeling is like when you first find out you're actually moving, maybe not permanently, but indefinitely to another country, and from finding out all the way to, excuse me, to taking that flight to that country.
It's scary, but exciting. I think it's something that everybody should do if they have the opportunity. The first opportunity I had, I was 23. I didn't grow up in a family where foreign holidays was the norm. We would generally holiday within the UK. So when I had the opportunity to have my first holiday with girlfriends, it was a whole new experience for me, and I loved being somewhere completely different to home. I was working in insurance at the time in the UK, which was not overly exciting, but it was okay.
Yeah, it paid the bills, I
It
guess.
paid the bills, and it gave me a great skill. And a friend contacted me and said that there is an opportunity with a UK-based holiday company called Thompson Holidays, and they were looking for holiday reps. And whenever my friends and I went on holiday to Spain or Greece or anywhere, I would be the one at the end of the 2 weeks crying at the airport or even in the resort because I didn't want to leave. So I saw this as an opportunity. I saw this as something good as opposed to something overly scary. And I applied for the position, didn't actually think I stood a chance. So was pleasantly shocked and surprised when I was offered the role.
Right.
I then had a 5-day course back in the UK to learn the very basics of the skills. And literally the following week, I was on a flight heading off to Cyprus. I'd never been to Cyprus before in my life.
Right.
And because it all happened so quickly, and as I say, I was 23. I was young, I was crazy, somewhat naive. It was exciting. And one of my friends took me to the airport. And it wasn't until I physically got to the gate that I suddenly realized what I was doing. And then I cried.
Wow, okay.
Which was unexpected.
And just to cut you off a little, when you said cry, were you crying because you were sad, or
No.
maybe you thought you were making a mistake? Or
No,
what was
none
that
of those things. I think it was just that realization of, oh my God, I'm going to a whole different country that I've never been before, and I don't know a single solitary person. And it was that realization
Right.
that kind of hit me and made me think, what the hell am I doing? But before that, a lot of my friends said to me, well, you know, you don't speak the language. I said, no, I don't. You don't know anyone. Well, I'm guessing I'm going to kind of make friends. I am a relatively sociable person. Well, what happens if you don't like it? It's not prison. I get on a plane and I come back home. And I had to remind myself of that, of those three things. It didn't matter that I didn't speak the language. It didn't matter that I didn't know anyone. And if I really, really hated it, I would get on a plane and I would come home. And that was it.
It's a little bit profound. I mean, at 23, I don't think all of us might have that maturity or awareness to think that, we have options. Sometimes we think, or maybe just growing up in a culture like Singapore, like we think if we're relocating, like we would, we should stay the course of, at least 1 or 2 years before, truly finding out if it's for us and if we should come back. But in your case, you just reminded yourself, like, if I don't like it, I'll just take the first flight home.
And that's it, because we all have that opportunity, or most of us have that opportunity to go back if things really don't work out. But if you don't take that opportunity in the first instance, you'll never know.
Right.
So I'd never really thought of myself as being brave, but when I look back, being 23 in the early 90s is very different to being 23 now. I look at 23-year-olds now and I think, oh my God, they're so switched on. They know exactly what they want. They've got their lives mapped out on where they are now and where they want to be. Right. I had no idea what I was doing from day to day. I didn't go to university. I didn't want to go to university. I loved school, loved it, had the best time. But continuous education, that wasn't for me. And I knew that. So I wanted to get out into the big wide world. And again, I took that opportunity. I suppose I've always been, without me recognizing it at the time, I've always just done what makes me happy. So yeah, I'd had a few years work under my belt. I'd been in insurance for 7 years at this point. It was okay, like I say, it gave me good grounding. It gave me a lot of skills that I could take away, right. But I wasn't passionate about it. So having the opportunity to live in another country, which I'd never had before and didn't ever believe that I would be given, I jumped at it. Right. And it was only ever supposed to be for 6 months. And I ended up being away for 2.5 years.
Wow. Well, I guess, thinking that it's only 6 months probably helped, right?
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. But then what happens at the end of the 6 months? That's
true. Yeah. That uncertainty can be easy too.
I actually didn't think about that.
Okay.
I kind of just went in head first, and it was like, I'll worry about that later.
Yeah, I mean, when you're 23, I don't think.
That's it. Yeah, you feel invincible at 23.
You really do, like just not a care in the world.
Exactly.
So, I mean, talk us through the challenges you faced when you first, got into this new country, when you first started working. Like, what are some of the challenges that, that I would assume would be different if you had just gotten a job in a country that you grew up in?
Yeah, okay. I actually don't feel that there was that many challenges. When I look back now, mm-hmm. They probably were huge at the time.
Right.
But now, it was pretty easy. Okay. Because I had arrived in this country with a job, and therefore with a renowned British company. They gave me somewhere to live. The money was, shocking, but you don't do it for the money, you do it for the experience and the opportunity.
When you say shocking, is it good, bad?
Oh God, bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was very bad. I mean, this was 1995, and yeah, it was minimal, but I didn't have to pay for accommodation. I was able to eat in some of the hotels and accommodations that I looked after. Mm-hmm. So, I wasn't destitute or anything like that. I just had to be mindful. But Yeah, probably the biggest thing was making friends. Back in the UK, I had an amazing network of friends, which I still have. You know, my school friends are still very much a huge part of my life. So I kind of went from having this big circle of friends and being not the center, but definitely involved and included, to not knowing a single solitary person. Um, but actually, making friends was really easy because we were all in exactly the same situation. It didn't matter how old you were, if you'd worked in this industry or not before. Um, and I think it gave me confidence
Right.
that I didn't have a choice. If I wanted to make friends, I had to put myself out there and talk to people. The language, that was interesting. Greek Cypriot is not an easy language to learn if you're not linguistic, and I am
Right.
not. But I would try. It would go to the point, though, that I would arrive in the hotels or be with the coach drivers, and I would attempt to say something to them in Greek, and yeah, they would just respond to me back in English, which didn't help me,
Yeah.
but it helped them. As far as they were concerned, they wanted to improve their English because the majority of the guests that were staying in their hotels, that were going on to the excursions, were British, and therefore they wanted to be able to communicate with the people that um, helped boost the economy within that country.
Right.
So not being able to speak Greek Cypriot really wasn't an issue. Discipline, I think that was probably my biggest challenge. I am a sociable party butterfly, call it what you will.
Yeah.
So for me, the law of not going out was too much.
Right.
I loved it. The nightlife was amazing. And again, at 23, it was like, oh my God, I can go out every night if I want
Yeah.
to. And by doing that, you would make more friends, whether it be people that worked in the bars or the restaurants, holiday makers, other reps from other companies. I didn't just stay friends with people from Thompson Holidays.
Yeah.
I made friends with other tour operators such as First Choice and Air Tours and many others that were out there, because we were all in exactly the same situation.
Right.
We were these youngsters that had this huge responsibility of looking after countless people that were there on their holiday. And again, back in that time, just having a 2-week holiday, if you were in Europe, was a big thing. People would save up all year to go on a 2-week holiday. And it's very different now. People have
Right.
long weekends away. They will very often have, 2-week holidays. So it's very different, and you have that responsibility, which you don't forget about that.
Right.
But it was fun at the same time.
Interesting. It's I quite some time back I met someone who was a Reuters journalist,
Hmm.
and he kind of explained exactly what you explained. He said, like, even though he was competing for the same stories as all his journalist counterparts,
Yeah.
regardless from, like, CNN, BBC, and all of that, like when they go to different countries, like he was mainly based in Africa,
Hmm.
and he said, like, once, even though you're all chasing the same story and trying to get there first, your first almost animal instinct is to make friends,
Yes.
because it's otherwise really lonely.
Yes, it's a humanistic trait.
Yeah.
We are not designed to be alone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how you connect with these people, they become your tribe.
Right.
My school friends who I've known for many years now, 35 years plus, some of them, they are my tribe, and you can't dictate who your family will be. And I have a great relationship with my family, but I have a better relationship with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I would say they're probably the people that know the real me, that know the true me, because we've been through so much together. And it is different to your family. Your family, you belong to regardless,
Right.
you know, and there's times when you're going to hate each other and you argue all the time. My sister and I, younger sister, oh my God, we've gone through huge bouts of years of not speaking to each other. And then something will happen and it's bam, you know, all of that has gone away.
Right.
And we know that we are family and we will always be there for each other regardless. But that connection doesn't have to be as strong with friends unless you work at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key. You have to work at it, whether they're here in Singapore, whether they were there in Cyprus or Spain, whether they're in the UK, you have to work at it.
Right.
So
which brings me to my next question, which I think is something also that I would like to know would be, I mean, let's say, because you mentioned like how, you know, the nightlife and there were a lot of opportunities to mingle and make friends.
Yeah.
Say there wasn't any opportunities and you had to make those opportunities for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend someone do when they move to a new country? Like, how can they, you know?
Oh my God.
You know,
I suppose it depends on the country.
Right.
And equally, it depends on the individual. For a sociable person as I am, I don't enjoy doing things like networking. You know, I don't enjoy having to put myself out there, because I think regardless of how extrovert, and it, you know, and people have varying degrees of extrovertness within them, we all have this fear of rejection.
Right.
So I don't like putting myself in that position, but what's the alternative? You know, so when I was there, it was easy because we were all there doing the same thing, and therefore we all had this common connection. So it was much, much, much easier. And you tend not to do that particular job if you're an introvert.
Right.
So moving to Spain was slightly different because I knew I was only going to be there for 3 months. So the connections that I built were less solid because I knew, you know, I just had a 3-month period. I needed to kind of get through it, and then I was going to be back in the UK.
Right.
Coming here.
Here meaning Singapore?
Meaning Singapore, yes. Again, was slightly different again. I'd never been to Asia when I had the opportunity to come here. Luckily for me, somebody at work suggested putting me in touch with a family member that had recently also relocated to Singapore. But again, it wasn't easy. I had to make that first move, to connect with them and say, hey, I'm just going to arrive on this date. Would you like to meet? They could have easily said no. They could have easily said yes, of course, and then, you know, never see them again.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, I think one of the things that I've learned here that I always share with new people is making friends is a little bit like dating. You have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince.
Right.
Just because you have a commonality with a person doesn't mean that that connection is going to there. It doesn't mean that you're going to actually be friends.
Mm-hmm.
You could be acquaintances, again, of varying different degrees. But luckily for me, this individual, or the two individuals, they were married, became, and absolutely will always be, lifelong friends. They're no longer here, so you know that's very sad for me. But that's a whole different topic. So I think, you know, when I met them, they had been here about 3 months pre me, so they very kindly gave me a couple of sites on, you know, where to go and what to do. So I joined these sites. I joined things like the meetup group and intonations, and there was a Facebook group called First Thursdays. So I joined all of these things,
Right.
continuously not knowing a single person, and it ended up me, and I was a bit scared, but there was a group called First Thursdays, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. And I remember speaking to my then boss at the time, and she'd only been here in Singapore for 6 weeks pre me, and I said, oh, do you want to come with me? And she said, oh no. I was like, oh, okay. And she said, why are you going? And I said, because I want to make some friends here. I
Right.
don't want my time here to just be me. And she said, oh, well, what about if they're all, dare I say it, what about if they're all weird and a bunch of freaks? And I said, well, do you know what? I'm just going to have to take that risk.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, I'll be polite, I'll have one drink, and if they're not my kind of people, then I make my excuses and I leave.
Yeah.
As it happens, I'm still very much in touch with most of the people that were at that particular event. So this
Right.
was 5 weeks in of me being in Singapore, and 5 years on, I'm still great friends with them.
Right.
So, yeah, it was the best decision I ever made, even though it was a scary decision. So I
Interesting.
suppose the best advice I would give to people is you have to put yourself out there. You do not have a choice.
Mhm.
And for me, recently, I've had people connect with me via intonations. I've had people connect with me via LinkedIn. And I hope I've helped those people by sharing my experiences and putting them in touch with maybe like-minded people that I think that they would have a good relationship with, because you have to kind of pay it forward.
Yeah, you really do. But I mean, to touch on the point you were mentioning, I mean, it must be scary to, well, number one, when you're alone, but
Yeah.
number two, to really take a step,
Yeah.
at going out for these events, because I don't know, I would imagine myself being really scared, but that's mainly because of my personal character. I don't
Yeah.
really like to talk to people, or
Yeah.
like in a extroverted way, so
Uh-huh.
to speak. So are these the only options available to us? I guess is what I'm trying to ask. 'Cause if so, I mean, ooh,
Yes.
yeah.
I think the question, yes, I think that the answer to that question is yes, because if you think that just sitting back and waiting for someone to come to you is going to happen, it's not.
Right.
You know, before I actually came to Singapore, I was getting prepared, and it happened quite quickly, to the point that I didn't really have the opportunity to think about it. It just kind of happened. And obviously I was much, much older. 20 years had passed since I had lived abroad before. And once again, it was something that I was doing on my own. But I had a little bit of a wobble at one point and thought, oh my God, am I really doing this again? Am I really putting myself in this position again?
Right.
But then a colleague at my company at the time, who is now a friend, she said to me, you're absolutely doing the right thing, because fortune favours the brave. And again, at that point in my life, I didn't really see myself as being brave. It was just an opportunity that in later life, I didn't want to look back and think, God, I missed that opportunity. What would have happened? I don't really like having regrets.
Right.
I would much rather, excuse me, I would much rather have a failure than have a regret. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but that's who I am.
Right.
And all of these opportunities that I've had have helped shape who I am today.
And I think you mentioned, that you are also trying to pay it forward to people who connect with you.
Yeah.
And I think there's something there too, because I remember when I went on a semester abroad in Ecuador,
Mm-hmm.
and and I think this is something the universities regardless of where it is in the world, do really well. And that's like they connect you with someone local, and then
Yeah.
they kind of show you the ropes, but also connect you with other people so you can form your own networks on
Yeah.
your own based on your interests.
Yeah.
But almost like someone to be your guide for like the first week, you know?
Yeah.
So it's almost like a tour guide for for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And for me, I found that immensely helpful because the
Mm-hmm.
first and now they are also my forever friends, right? Like
Yeah.
we're still tight even though we're not
Yeah.
close. And I mean, there were three of them. So there was Felipe, there was a guy named Galo, and there was a guy named Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And so they connected me with everyone. They
Yeah.
made me feel at home.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like those are things that, you know, as adults, those types of safety nets almost
Yeah.
like are not really afforded to us.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
you know,
agree.
I feel like that's something, you know, that whether it's companies or I mean, especially if you're coming there for work,
Yeah.
like they could probably try to incorporate into, you know, the relocation package, so to
Yeah,
speak.
and you're right. And you know, because of the profession that I'm in, we have people coming and going, you know, from different countries all the time. So this is something that I've dealt with for many, many years now. And again, I think as from an employer perspective, companies could do a bit more. I mean, it's okay giving somebody a guide and saying, oh, you know, these are the highlights of whichever country it is that you find yourself
Right.
in, that you've relocated to. But they wouldn't necessarily hook you up with somebody in the office and say, oh, this is going to be your buddy.
Yeah.
But that's a really, really easy thing to do. And a lot of companies don't do that. Not
Right.
all companies, some do, but a
Yeah.
lot do not. And then it's just a case of, again, having to find your own way.
Right.
And when I meet people, whether it's they've relocated within the companies that I physically work in, and therefore I've had a hand in that relocation, or whether it's just random people that have connected with me, or even if it's myself, you know, there's this question of what's the best way to relocate to another company? Is it with a significant other, or is it on your own? Well, for me, on the 3 occasions that I've done that, at that particular time in life, I've been single. So there wasn't a significant other for me to rant to and share my fears with and cry if it all got a bit too much and enjoy all of the good stuff. I didn't have that opportunity. But you know what? I actually think that was a good thing, because if I had that significant other, especially in later life when I came here
Right.
in to Singapore, I think if I'd had that significant other, it would have been too comfortable for me to just rely on that other person. Whereas the situation that I found myself in was, okay, I've got two choices. I do sit back and do nothing and just spend this whole time on my own, or I put myself out there and I start making some friends.
Right.
So, yeah, again, it's like you have a choice, but for me, the first option of sitting back and doing nothing wasn't the best choice for me.
Right. Interesting. I think because relocation is tough because in a sense that maybe you don't have a choice to relocate. Like sometimes a job takes you to a place that, you know, can really advance your career.
Yeah.
But sometimes your personality doesn't allow doesn't allow for an easy transition
Yeah.
almost. So apart from I don't know, like going out and meeting people, how did you at least maintain a certain level of normality and kind of flow into your routine in a way that makes you at least feel like I mean, regardless of whether you have friends or not, to
Yeah.
make you feel like, okay, this is home now.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on then your experience?
Yeah, I think people that have never gone through the experience of relocation think relocating and living in a different country is this glamorous, fabulous lifestyle. And don't get me wrong, I love living here, you know, and yes, it can be glamorous and yes, it is fabulous. But the bottom line is it doesn't matter what country I live in. I still have to get up and go to work and deal with the stresses that work brings and do my grocery shopping and clean the house. I don't have a helper. I don't have a cleaner. And I know that's a very normal thing to have here in Singapore, but for me, that I just don't really want to go down that route. I still have to go to the gym. I still have to do all of the boring stuff, So when you look at it from that perspective, it's not glamorous. It's not fabulous. It's the same.
Right.
It's literally same, different country. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you break it down, it can be boring. There are the amazing parts of it, of course.
Right.
It is experiencing this whole new culture. It is experiencing different people, different opportunities, being able to be in a different part of the world that affords me to explore this part of the world, which would be much, much, much harder to do had I remained in the UK. I've gone off on a tangent. I apologise. What was your question?
Well, I guess my question is, and maybe because my question wasn't very clear and concise, was really just, is it important to create that sense of normalcy by
normality?
Yeah,
that
normality.
Was it.
Yeah.
But being here on a day-to-day basis, that is normal for me.
Right.
Everything that I do is normal.
Right.
Is my normal. I don't know how trailing spouses cope. It doesn't matter whether you're the wife or the husband,
right.
In a relationship. But if you are the trailing spouse, that I imagine must be much, much harder, because if you're the reason that you're here, which generally is for a job, then you get into that normality stride very easy. But for the trailing partner, do they want to work?
Mm-hmm.
Is whatever they happen to do from a professional perspective, is that easy in Singapore or whichever country they land in, to find a job? What happens if you have a family? As I mentioned, the helper is very much the norm here, but not for me.
Right.
But for families, it tends to be the norm. So I actually couldn't imagine being a trailing spouse that's had their normality completely flipped on its head.
Yeah.
That must be much, much harder.
Right.
So I think they are the people that would probably struggle most with finding their new normal.
And because the way I see it, as in, and I'm drawing from examples here. I remember when I was in my previous company, and our CEO was from San Francisco.
Yeah.
And he came down and he said, like, sometimes it can be, when we're opening new markets, like, people think it's that the challenge is, the hard work, getting money in, blah blah blah. And he said for him, when he goes in and he opens new markets, the greatest challenge is to incorporate the same routines he had back in San Francisco, in India, in Singapore, in Australia. And he said those were the things that helped keep him sane, because like, no matter where he is, right, he's like, 6 o'clock is gym, 7:30 is breakfast, 9 o'clock is work. so he never felt lost and like, think, I'm without my wife, I miss my kids. Like, he kind of almost like bookmarked it to, like, before he sleeps, then he thinks about his wife, he calls her and stuff like that. And I thought that was a really good philosophy, because
absolutely,
I think sometimes it just helps you at the very least compartmentalize the things you would otherwise make a big deal out of.
Yeah, you have to do what works for you, and everybody's different. And if having a routine helps, then you have to go with it. Not everybody can work to a routine.
Right.
I can. I suppose I'm quite a structured person. I can be very spontaneous, but my normal is I like to have that structure and routine. So yes, I'm probably very similar to that person,
Yeah.
where I will get up on a Monday and go to the gym and go to work and blah, 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 blah. But others would find that suffocating.
Yeah.
You know, so they have to find what works for them.
Right.
But if you are, and let's face it, most people that come here will be a guy with their partner trailing behind, and that more often than not means that that partner has had to give up possibly something that they love doing in order to be with the person that they love.
Right.
And what do? You know, they find themselves in a country that they don't know anyone apart from this one individual, and this one individual is going to be tied up at work all day,
Right.
possibly doing longer hours than normal because they have to get up to speed.
Yeah.
What do? Where do they go? How do they start making friends? So they are almost where I am as a single individual arriving in a country, but without the profession.
Right.
Unless they obviously choose to find something. I suppose it also gives people a great opportunity to maybe try something new.
Right.
Open up something on their own. Do something, you know, whether it be professional or hobby-wise. You know, just the options are endless. It's how you look at it and how you come to it.
Right.
And again, taking those opportunities and not passing them by.
Well, I suppose don't let the fear stifle you. Almost,
Exactly, which it always comes back to.
Yeah.
You know, that we all have that level of fear. We all have that fear of rejection, that fear of failure. But who cares? You know, sometimes
Yeah.
you've just got to take that first step, and if it works, amazing. But if it doesn't, okay, you tried.
Right. And it's funny because right now I'm in a long distance marriage, right? My wife works in Arizona.
Yeah.
So while we're figuring out the visas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I remember when I took a 3-month break from work and I was actually living there with her. I remember the thing that was scariest for me wasn't like finding new friends and stuff like that. You know, like for example, I did join meetups and join like football groups and stuff, which made it easy for me to well, not easy, but made it easier to at the very least introduce myself to people. But what I found difficult was the times when they were not available. It's almost like, what do I do with myself?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's why I think, to your point about actually finding something you can do do yourself and to own it and to devote time to it.
Yeah.
I believe there's a lot of truth in that, because it really allows you to not be dependent on
absolutely
on
and no
others.
one should be dependent on someone else, because that somewhat stifles who you are, your personality, you know, what you could achieve. And I think if you find yourself in a situation, whether you've chosen to relocate on your own or if you are that trailing spouse, you know, that gives you a great opportunity, because you will suddenly have lots of time on your own until you work stuff out, until you start building that network of friends, that you've got the opportunity to literally take a step back and think, who am I? What do I want to do? What opportunities lay open to me? And just plunge in.
Right.
You know, I had a period of unemployment before my current position, which was great from one perspective of, okay, I've got some time. I can go and do some travel. But then it's not great because, you know, living in Singapore when you're not working is tough, because it's a very expensive country to live in. But also, all of my friends were working. There's very few of my friends that do not work. So it could be boring. I hate the gym. I'm not a gym bunny in any way, shape, or form.
I
But
can
right,
relate.
it's like, oh God, I go because I have to, not because I enjoy it. But I started going to the gym, and I now go regularly. I still hate it, but I go. But the other thing that I randomly decided to do was learn a language. I said earlier, I'm not linguistic. I'm absolutely not. I would love to be one of these people that picked up a language as
Yeah.
easy as it was to do anything else. But I started to learn Spanish, which I am still doing, and I love it.
Right.
Every day, I give a little bit of time to myself to learn a new language, which is a new skill.
It
And
is.
at some point, I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll retire to Spain, but it doesn't matter whether I end up living in Spain again or not. It's a new skill that I've learned, which I would never have done before, ever.
Right.
And from a health perspective, yes. The gym, I
Yeah.
see the benefits.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have to
exactly.
work out.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we have to add that in. Yeah, no, I get it. So, well, I guess this is kind of like the final question, but almost, I think, the most important question. The Ellie that you are today,
Yes.
what would you advise the Ellie of 23 years old?
Yeah.
When she was moving to a new country, like what is the blueprint you would impart to that person?
As I am now to
Yeah.
the 23-year-old me.
Yeah, and like what would you recommend based on the things you did right, wrong, the things you enjoyed, blah blah blah?
Actually, I would probably turn that around. I probably have bigger fears now than I did at the age of 23.
Oh, okay.
Because as you get older and you get more senior in your career, those failures become bigger. That confidence grows in one way but lacks in another. So I would actually take a step back and just remind how excited and carefree and fearless the 23-year-old me was. Because if I don't remind myself of that person, I probably would never have done this in my 40s. So yeah, my 23-year-old me was much braver than I am now.
Right. So
she gave me the tools to be able to do what I'm doing now.
Interesting. It's almost pretty profound, like
I agree. I'd never really thought about it that way before.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so true. Like the things that shape us today is really because of the things that we didn't let fear stop us from doing when we were younger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
philosophy for life, right?
I know, right? And that's the thing. It's like, I've learned so much from that individual, and from just a skills perspective. The skills that I learned in that particular position were so transferable. I'm still using them today.
Right.
Which, is amazing when I think about it. Probably the one thing that I would never and have never and probably will never get to grips with when I was 23 or even now was saying goodbye to people. That's probably the hardest thing. And it doesn't matter where in the world you live, if it's not your home country, you build all of these networks of friends who become your family, who become your tribe.
Right.
And at some point, either you or they have to leave.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing.
I
think my 23-year-old me had to deal with that then.
Right.
There was a lot of tears.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember because when I was living in Ecuador, and I wasn't particularly close to, I mean, by nature, it takes a while for me to be close to someone, but I mean, saying goodbye to those people, I mean, because especially the ones who found a way to change your life in some way.
Exactly.
And then after a while, you're like, okay, bye. It's almost, it almost doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed. But if the friendship was true and genuine, it will remain forever.
And I truly believe that is as well. It's just that, sometimes you wish like the people who impacted your life deserve
Yeah.
a little bit more of your time.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, life doesn't always
Yeah.
allow you that opportunity.
It doesn't, but again, you have to work at it.
Yeah,
You
that's
have
true.
to work at it, and that's easy.
It is. Yeah,
If you want it,
yeah,
it's easy.
that's true.
And the technology that we have today makes it so easy
Yeah,
that there's no reason for those relationships to not continue.
yeah,
Back in 1995, we didn't have smartphones. I
yeah,
still remember receiving letters, which was so exciting.
yeah,
On post date, like I got a batch of letters,
yeah,
which I still have.
yeah.
I still have all of those letters
Right,
from friends and family, because oh my God, that I couldn't imagine not keeping them,
right.
because they're part of who I am. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
you have to work at that.
It's true. It's funny you said that. Slightly off topic, I guess. I had a friend who did his. Well, I don't know if you call his friend, because yeah, I guess we are friends. And he did his PhD back in the 90s, right? Or his master's back in the 90s, and
Yep.
he said like it was a new country, and he found it so difficult.
Yeah.
And like he was close to his parents, and he used to like write letters to them. He was like, "I'm sad. I want to go home.
Oh,
I'm
no.
frustrated. And can I just come back?" And then like 2 weeks later, he gets a letter from them. He's like, "I forgot what I was angry about." Like he's like, "This letter is no,
Exactly.
yeah, it doesn't mean anything anymore."
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think again that's still the case. You
Yeah.
have a bad day, and I remember being in Cyprus, having a bad day, and just thinking, oh my God, I hate it here. I'm just going to go. And then the next day I'd wake up and I'd go and stand out on my balcony. I'd see the sea and the blue sky, and everything would be fabulous again.
Yeah.
But we're humans. We're adaptable creatures. We're flexible.
Right.
And it depends on you as an individual, how adaptable you want to be, how flexible you want to be, and how much you want to fit in to the surroundings that you find yourself in at any one time. So, yeah, relocation, it's tough. It really, really is. But the rewards that you get from it are countless.
And that's a beautiful way to end it off, I guess.
Yes.
Allison, thank you so much for
It's been a
being part
pleasure.
of this podcast. And I hope the people listening really benefited from that, as
Yeah.
I'm sure they will.
I hope so.
Yeah. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.